So, I wanted to put a video up so that way there's no more need for discussion after all the craziness that's happened. Alright, so a few things. There's real world events, and then there's role playing. Alright? Now, anybody who's ever played Dungeons and Dragons already knows when it comes to role playing, literally the only limitation that there is your imagination. Alright? Now, when it comes to real world, there are events that ultimately, using, games like Dungeons and Dragons to ultimately learn, as a learning tool, can actually end up going ahead and, keeping from your imagination being stifled, could actually go ahead and, be able to have real world applications to be able to better your life, better your future. Some people just learn differently. So, I want to go ahead and talk about the part that I find funny when it comes to investigations and, how there's been the whole whataboutism, false dichotomy when it comes to, the whole Hunter Biden investigation and that whole thing. It's pretty funny that, it seems like the Republican Party as a whole is trying to pretty much get this whole gotcha moment for influence peddling. And the funny thing is, it's like, hey, so the people that are pushing to try to get an investigation on the influence peddling literally have gotten people to go ahead and manufacture evidence, go and do video editing as well as audio editing, to go ahead and, cherry pick things they wanted to go ahead and, falsely represent, while at the same time, trying to go ahead and make a case out of that to try to go and fit their own agenda, while at the same time, hiding their own improprieties. So, it's pretty funny because Hunter Biden ended up going ahead and saying, hey, I'll give a deposition, but it's got to be public so that way, what I testify doesn't end up being cherry picked. Well, you want to get on camera? You want to say hi? Go ahead and say hi. Sorry about that. But, and then Fox News starts talking about, oh, well, we want to go ahead and do closed door tests about depositions so that way it doesn't end up going ahead and being chaotic. It's funny, for years we had to hear about the Steele dossier and, Benghazi, that whole situation, and how, ultimately, because of the factor of a lack of transparency, that it would go ahead and erode the public's trust in that investigation, and the false dichotomy, and it's like, it's really seeming like Fox News is trying to keep from something that Hunter Biden would end up testifying about, from going ahead and, just absolutely putting the evidence out that would end up solidifying that lawsuit, the election interference lawsuit, and ultimately, if they were going to be a satire and propaganda, channel, say you're going to be a satire and propaganda channel, but to go ahead and try to pretty much be a platform for, character assassination and, pretty much political grandstanding, to try to tweak the Overton window, try to twist that narrative in their favor. It's like, listen, I understand fighting against the big money interest. Corporate America ends up going ahead and investing advertisement money into Fox News. Fox News goes and talks about what the corporations would want and doesn't cover what corporations, if were to come out, would go ahead and absolutely destroy and dismantle their companies. So, question that I'm asking. The excuse now for not wanting Hunter Biden to go ahead and testify publicly is because, don't want it to get turned into a spectacle. Not to mention that, don't want to give him any airtime, don't want to give him any coverage. All right, point heard. But now question, when trying to go ahead and give that false dichotomy and whataboutism and, trying to, give accusations of influence peddling, do we not talk about the factor that Ivanka Trump ended up going ahead and getting a whole bunch of patents that ended up getting stolen from other people registered with China back when that whole administration, ultimately that would be intellectual property theft, as well as influence peddling, you know? Well, at the same time, too, with that fraud investigation, Trump was told until the investigation was done, not allowed to withdraw more than a certain amount. I believe the amount was $5 million. Just got reported tonight that he ended up withdrawing $40 million. Now keep in mind that $40 million ended up going ahead and breaching the public trust. All right. Ultimately, when you end up setting up blind trust, you have duties that end up going to, the shareholders of that trust, but you also have the trustees. And ultimately, if you end up breaching the trust and you end up defrauding those trustees, ultimately that would end up causing not only dissolution of, any assets, any properties, but also would end up going ahead and leading to a lot of indictments for a long time. So the question is, you want to go there? I'm just wondering, do you want to go there? Because understand, Hunter Biden isn't bluffing. If anything, Hunter Biden's making it pretty damn clear, hey, you go down that route, I don't give a damn if you actually think that my dad ends up going ahead and looking like a knockoff Jeff Dunham Walter puppet. All right? I don't give a damn if you don't agree with his policies and everything. I'm not my dad. That being said, all right, when it comes down to the burden of proof and everything and evidentiary burden, ultimately, if, the GOP hasn't gone and, with that special committee actually gone and, given those indictments and gotten the Department of Justice involved, it's because of the factor that ultimately there is not enough evidence to go ahead and be able to prosecute. If anything, it sounds to me like there would be a situation of that evidence exonerating him. So if you really want to go there, I'll understand it could be brought there. But that would be one of the very few losses from the Department of Justice in a very long time. And I don't think they want that to be on the record. Not to mention that, I don't think they want it to be on the record. The factor that ultimately, because of, public interest in creating a case, to go ahead and target not only civilians, but also people that would end up taking jobs that, would actually benefit the entirety of their not only local community, but their state and all that. So I don't think they want to make a precedent of that, because that would ultimately set the precedent of, hey, absolutely anyone and everyone can go ahead and get investigated with all of their constitutional rights completely violated just because of who they're related to, what that person that they were related to ended up doing behind their back that they had no knowledge of. And then from there, it's like, hey, at that point, that's government tyranny. And I'm pretty sure at that point, the Department of Defense would end up stepping in and being like, listen, we can't allow this. That would be turning the democracy into an autocracy. And, we don't really allow martial law to end up getting kicked in just to pet somebody's ego. So dial it back a bit, Dr. Evil.